So, to get started, most everybody got done with section 1 and the questions after that. There's only 4. A lot of you got done with section 2, which is about the business cycle. And a few of you got to section 3. Investment activities, banking. So what I'm going to talk about today is the business cycle. So as you read through this, you saw that businesses can run through cycles. These happen in the same order, and there's no designated time frame from each one of the cycles. So the first one, prosperity, the prosperity part of the business cycle. That's where everything's good, everybody's making money, and the unemployment rate is low, so a lot of people are at work. A lot of people are at work, businesses are doing well, everybody in general is doing well. Yeah, there's still going to be some people that aren't. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Maybe next go around, that same group of people will be doing better. But overall, as a whole, under prosperity, the country's doing well, the economy's running great, and not too many big worries. So that's kind of where we had been the last 2.5, 3 years before quarantine. So, after we get done, after we have prosperity, eventually things start to slow down. Buying starts to slow down. People start to get laid off because demand isn't as high. That's where we get to recession. So the economy starts to slow down. And the next part of the cycle after recession is depression, where the economy's bad, unemployment rates are really high. Back in the Great Depression, there's only been one official depression in the U.S. That was in the 1930s. Unemployment rates back then were over 25%. That's very high. The highest they've gotten since then was in, it might have been during the quarantine. I think unemployment rates might have hit 13%-ish, but also during we had a great economic downturn. It wasn't called a depression, but we had a big economic problem back in 2008, 2009. Unemployment hit that same number, 13 to 14%. I think officially it was at 12, just over 12%. But due to some numbers manipulation and every agency, it happens all the time. Nobody wants to be known as high unemployment. I think they counted real employment of about 14% back then in 2008, 2009. So, but until quarantine, we were under 4% unemployment rate, which was fantastic. So those are the 4 parts of the business cycle. You got prosperity, recession, depression, and that's only 3. We've got one more. So after depression, then we start to get into a recovery to get better again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a squeaky noise on the floor with my shoe. This can actually be drawn into a kind of a wave. So I'll use my fantastic drawing skills here. You know, it's just a repeating wave. So on this one, this is going to be, remember, because we're going up to the crest of the wave. So this is recovery. Pardon me? Yeah, I'm writing it down here. Yeah, I got it written down here. You don't have to. No, you don't have to. Probably be a good idea to, though, but you don't have to. So you got recovery. So as the economy recovers from the low spot, eventually we hit prosperity. Then as things start to cool off, we get into a recession. And then the bottom of this is the depression. And then eventually, after we get through the depression, we got recovery comes back around. Things start to get better. Then we get back into prosperity. So, for each one of these cycles, there's no defined period of time. So each one could be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. You know, obviously with prosperity, we want that to last as long as possible because everybody's doing great. Depression, we want that to last the least amount of time as possible. Like I said, in the U.S., there's only been one depression, though. Generally, with the economists that are employed by the government, along with the Federal Reserve Bank, draw a line here. Once we start to hit a recession, they'll put in some policies, change interest rates to try to cut this depression off so we can cut this low part off and just hit straight over to recovery. But there's no actual business cycle part for that. But a lot of times they hit recession and go right into a recovery. These happen in the same order every time. So you don't go from recovery to recession and then prosperity. These all go in the same order, like waves in the ocean. So I'm going to start with prosperity, since it's the top one. So with prosperity, things are great. We've got high employment, usually, wages are up. These people are getting paid more because if employment's high, that means, unemployment's low, so the amount of workers that are available is pretty low, or the skilled workers needed for jobs is low, so businesses have to pay more money to get the workers that we need. Phone away. Phone. Okay. So wages are up. So if employment's high, wages are high, that means people are spending money. Buying things. Usually during this prosperity period, people are fulfilling their wants. Their wants are more towards your luxury items. So, people are spending money on stuff that, in a tighter period they might not buy. Home buying is up. So a lot of houses being sold, cars, TVs and appliances. The TVs on here. So basically, all the big, called the big ticket items, big ticket items are being bought during the prosperity period, because in general people have extra, have more disposable income. More disposable income. Businesses are doing great. Because typically, demand is up. So those are the general things that are happening during prosperity. Everything is, in general, overall, is fantastic. Like I said, there's always going to be some people that are left out of the boat on this, unfortunately, but that happens. So that's what's going on during prosperity. Well, the downside to this eventually is home buying. Eventually, once the shifting around gets done, home buying kind of slows down. People get move into newer or better cars, more reliable cars and trucks. The auto industry starts to slow down. So the auto industry slows down. So using GM as an example here in Fort Wayne, truck purchases start to slow down. Then GM starts to lay some people off. Well, the people that get laid off, then they don't have as much income to spend. They quit spending money. They slow down on the things that they're spending money on. So same thing with the appliances, TVs. People get new stoves and refrigerators once every few years, maybe 5 to 10 years or so. Same with TVs. TVs are a little bit more disposable now than what they have been in the past, but generally you buy a TV, you're going to keep it for a few years, 3 or 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 years or so. The way technology changes nowadays, TV cycling is a lot quicker than what it used to be in the past. So these things start to slow down. So businesses that were doing well, now demand is going down. So they start to lay people off. That's where we start heading towards a recession. So I'm going to stop here because we're going to have to take a break here shortly, and there's not enough time. Once I get going, I'll have to restart and go through all this all again. So everybody at home, we're going to break early for lunch. Recession. Put my glasses on so I can see a little bit better. So as I mentioned, eventually at the end of prosperity, buying starts to slow down. So as we start to head into a recession, buying slows because remember all these big purchases, people already buy these things, so eventually the demand starts to go down enough that it starts to affect the economy. So buying slows down. So if buying slows down, then there's less demand for goods. So that means businesses need less people to produce goods. So unemployment starts to go up. So unemployment goes up, means less people without jobs. So the folks that are unemployed, their income takes a hit, because unless they find another job quickly, they're going to be on unemployment for a short time, and eventually that runs out. But the extra income that people use to buy things to satisfy their wants, there's disposable income decreases. So buying's already starting to slow down, which leads to some unemployment. So disposable income decreases. So that means buying slows more, which leads to this same cycle. So then we have more unemployment, the disposable income that's in the economy starts to dry up even more. And more people are laid off. So demand starts to really decrease. So it kind of feeds into the problem. So that's why on a recession, in general, people can speculate, looks like we're headed towards a recession, or economists can say we're headed towards a recession. But it has to, for it to be an official recession, that usually gets stated by government economists, because once they declare that we're in a recession, when some of this stuff's already started, well, what about the folks that are kind of in recession-proof jobs? Because that is possible to be in a recession-proof job. So if you're in a recession-proof job, there's problems coming. Even those people people in recession-proof jobs that don't have to worry about too much about, losing their job or loss of income. Well, they stop spending too, or they curb their spending back some, because they still, even though they're in a job that they should be pretty safe, they're still going to start to hold on to their money as well. So they quit spending also. So then another thing that can happen during the slowdown or recession, so think about this, as businesses are closing, so less disposable income, so less people are going out to dinner. So restaurants start to get hurt. They're ones that took a big impact with the quarantine, but that wasn't a recession. That was something totally different. But there's less people spending money in restaurants. Your other service businesses, get hurt because people that were buying services don't have as much money to spend on services anymore, so they figure out to do things on their own instead of paying somebody to do that for them. So if there's something wrong with your car, where your first choice would have been take it somewhere and have it worked on, well, now you don't have as much money to pay for that, so maybe you find a friend that knows how to work on cars, or to figure out how to fix it yourself. So service businesses get hurt. Hair salons, auto service, and there's other businesses that can be listed here too, other than just service businesses. A lot of places get hurt in a recession. Well, something else that goes with this, let's say if I even put down TV sales, I'll put on TV sales so you can see an actual product on here. TV sales. So looking at the restaurant, well, they serve food. So if they don't have as many people coming in and buying food, well, the restaurant doesn't need to be stocked with as much food. So they cut down on their supply. So they cut down on supply of food. They cut down on supply of beverages. Their paper products that they use in the restaurant, like napkins, straws. They use placemats. If they use paper for table coverings, soap for the restrooms, soap for employees. All those little things that you don't think about, those come from other businesses. So if the restaurants don't need those items, and they're not buying them from the other businesses, well, those other businesses are suffering also then, because they're losing business. And I mentioned like hair salons. Well, they sell a lot of products for hair, along with the service of doing hair. If people are cutting back on getting their hair done, well, not as many products are being sold from the shampoo companies or the hair conditioner companies, those places. So if the salons aren't ordering as many supplies, well, that affects the shampoo companies. Well, if the shampoo companies aren't selling as much shampoo, then they don't need as many employees to produce the shampoo in the factory. So they'll start to lay employees off. Same with auto service. Mechanics to fix your cars, but usually they need auto parts. Yeah, most of the auto parts that we get are imported, but they're imported to some place. So that distribution center that imports the auto parts and then sells them to the service places, well, if they don't need as many people working in the warehouse, they start to lay people off. So there's less income that's in their communities for that. Like TV sales. TV sales go down. Yes, most of our TVs are imported, but they also go to a distribution center. Some of the TV parts do come from the U.S. A friend of mine is the vice president of a factory that produces some parts for TVs. Those parts are exported, then they're imported back in as part of the TVs. Well, if people aren't buying TVs anymore, or if the sales for TVs have decreased, you don't need as many parts to make the TVs out of. So those people get laid off, and then they don't have the money to go spend in the community. They don't have the money to go spend in restaurants or in the stores to buy groceries or clothing or any of the other things that you kind of don't think about, the small stuff. They don't have as much money to spend on those things, so they start cutting back. So what this is called the ripple effect. It's called the ripple effect. That's definitely one you're going to need to know. If it's not in the study guide, it should be. The ripple effect, how when one industry has a downturn, and then the suppliers that they bought their stuff from, they get affected also. And then their suppliers that they use, they all get affected. It's that ripple effect. So kind of, you think you're throwing a rock or a pebble in a pond or in a mud puddle. You see, you have that one landing place, but then you have that ripple effect all throughout the water, so it affects all the surrounding areas too. So that's the ripple effect of things slowing down. And it also works back the other way too. When things start to get busy again, that same ripple effect affects those other businesses because they can grow and hire people back again. So there's some information about the recession, and then we'll hit depression here. Like I said, generally, the government economists and the Federal Reserve, they all work together to avoid the depression. But it can still happen. But we've had one in the history of the U.S. So high unemployment. During the Great Depression, the unemployment was about 25%. For the most part, about the only thing that's selling, the only items that are in demand, fall in the needs category. Because we all still need to eat, drink at least water, buy some new clothes when we can, not very often, or not at all during a depression. So, food and water are the main things during a depression. Factories close down. Other businesses close. Pretty bleak times during a depression. So we'll see some more stuff on that later on next week. So depression, bad stuff, not good. We don't want a depression. So we'll skip over here to recovery. We'll not skip, we're just moving on to recovery. So usually what happens to try to get us to going into recovery mode, the Federal Reserve will lower loan rates to get businesses to take advantage of the low rates, because a lot of times businesses need money to, replace equipment or expand, because businesses know that things are going to come back, especially big corporations. They've been around for a long time. They know how it works. So if they can take advantage of the extremely low interest rates, they'll do that to refurbish equipment or add on warehouse space, something like that. So eventually, through that process, businesses start to rehire. So as businesses start to rehire, more money goes back into the economy. As more money starts to get spent, well, then demand starts to go up in other areas. So as demand starts to go up, then that helps other businesses can rehire. Other businesses start to rehire because demand is starting to go up. And usually the first thing that demand is going to go up in is things that are in the needs category. So people start to stock up on more food and things like that. They need to start to maybe replenish clothing first. They replenish all the things that they kind of neglected during a depression. And then once those things are taken care of, then we start to get back into wants. Now people start to look at maybe getting a better car, maybe they need to move into a bigger house. Maybe they need to start to replace some appliances that started to break down during the recession or the depression. So that eventually, buying increases enough I really misspelled that. Increases enough that we once again hit prosperity. So that's through the whole process, even through depression, back to prosperity. So like I said, there's no stated amount of time that any of these steps in the cycle last. We avoid a depression. So we've only had one. We have financial problems, financial breakdown in 2008, 2009, kind of dragged out through 2010 and 11. and then things started to go into a recovery mode. So there you have it, the business cycle, just in time for class to be over in a minute.